With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown. Our top stories. Agriculture Minister, the Honorable Samuel Duggins, provides insights on GEZ MOU. Police seize ammunition and cannabis in St. Kitts and Nevis. OECS Director General says region needs to embrace radical shifts at 9th Annual Growth and Resilience Dialogue. Dania Phipps sentenced to 45 years for murder in St. Kitts and Nevis. 5 in custody over massive cocaine find in Guyana. CDB President Daniel Best warns of the negative impacts of geopolitical tensions and protectionist policies on regional economic stability. Internationally, Beijing increases tariffs on U.S. imports to 125%, hitting back at President Donald Trump's decision to hike duties on Chinese goods to 145%. Now, the details. In a recent broadcast of In Focus on April 9, 2025, the Honorable Samuel Duggins, Minister of Sports, Agriculture, Fisheries and Marine Resources, Small Business, Entrepreneurship, Cooperatives and the Creative Economy, elaborated on the fruitful working visit to Nigeria where the delegation from the Federation attended the Afri-Caribbean Investment Summit. During the summit, a significant memorandum of understanding was signed between the Green Economic Zone in Nigeria and St. Kitts and Nevis, aiming to establish a dynamic partnership that both nations hope will mutually benefit.
This is one of the largest agricultural movements or institutions in the entire Nigeria, and by extension, one of the largest in Africa. It is pretty much a sovereign within the country. So it controls its own taxes, it controls its own, the development of what is grown, how, and where it is sold to.
Emphasizing the impactful nature of their partnership. The MOU signifies a commitment to leverage the resources and capabilities of both nations, allowing St. Kitts and Nevis to explore agricultural production opportunities that cater to a vast African market. The minister illustrated the potential for St. Kitts and Nevis products to gain traction in Nigeria, drawing parallels to the McKinley Company, which produces Tabasco hot sauce on a small island yet achieves global distribution.
I am now looking at that framework to seeing how St. Kitts and Nevis can play in the same global space. And MOUs like these open those avenues very wide for us to walk into that space.
Underscoring the possibility of exporting unique products from the Caribbean directly to Nigerian consumers. Duggins highlighted the prospect of producing St. Kitts and Nevis branded products such as hot sauce and jams that could be marketed effectively in Nigeria.
We do hot sauce very well. Why can't we have a St. Kitts and Nevis branded hot sauce, or a few of those that are in Nigeria on the shelves?
Pushing for a branding strategy that stands out among competitors. The conversation turned to the economic implications of this collaboration. Host Ian Richards asked Duggins how the new arrangements would affect taxes and tariffs between the nations. Duggins clarified that the agreements established with the GEZ were unique.
Our agreement with them is still outside of the scope of the country of Nigeria.
The arrangement would streamline the import process for St. Kitts and Nevis products and facilitate easier access to Nigerian goods. This cooperation addresses the current trade imbalances faced by the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Duggins noted that the country typically imports 98% of its consumables from the U.S. market, underscoring the need to diversify sources.
We see what is happening there now. We are saying now, let us diversify and get some of that from Africa.
The minister recognized concerns about potential competition from Nigerian products impacting local agricultural businesses.
Not at all. We are currently facing the same thing from the United States.
Duggins explained that the trade dynamics would improve overall agricultural outputs and as such enhance market competition, benefiting local farmers as well. In response to inquiries about the anticipated knowledge exchange and technical expertise from Nigeria, Duggins confirmed that this would indeed be a focus of the MOU. He noted that technical expertise transfer would allow both nations to share valuable insights in agricultural practices. This would highlight St. Kitts and Nevis's advanced approaches to climate resilience, which could serve as a learning opportunity for Nigeria. As discussions culminated, Richards inquired about the potential agro-hub and how it would reshape trade opportunities.
So there's actually a physical space that is going to be built out. But outside of the physical space, it's also a conceptual space.
The Agriculture Minister emphasized that this initiative would not only enable increased accessibility to goods from Nigeria, but also potentially revolutionize the agricultural landscape in St. Kitts and Nevis by leveraging the strengths of both countries in the market. Minister Duggins reiterated the shared objective of improving trade and fostering a robust agricultural sector that benefits both nations.
We are saying let us trade some of that with Africa. It is just that simple. Let us trade some of that with Africa.
This partnership is poised to open new avenues of economic development and cooperation between the Caribbean and West Africa, setting the stage for a promising future in agricultural trade. In a significant development, officers from the Special Services Unit SSU of the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force executed searches in 2 separate operations on April 6, 2025, resulting in the recovery of illegal ammunition and a substantial quantity of cannabis. According to police reports, the SSU searched a vacant lot in Connery, St. Kitts, acting on reliable information. The operation led to the seizure of 19 assorted rounds of ammunition. The recovered cache included 6.45mm rounds, 8.38 special rounds, and 5.25mm rounds. As at the time of reporting, no individual has been held accountable for these illicit findings. Simultaneously, the SSU deployed to the Majors Bay area of the Southeast Peninsula following tips regarding drug activity. Officers searched the area and discovered 38 packages of compressed vegetable material later confirmed as cannabis. Similar to the Connery incident, authorities have yet to identify any suspects connected to this crime. The Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force urges community members to come forward with any relevant information that may assist in these investigations. Citizens are encouraged to contact the nearest police station with tips or observations that may lead to further action to curb illegal activity within the Federation. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, ECCB, convened its 9th annual Growth and Resilience Dialogue with social partners on April 10th through 11th, 2025 at the ECCB headquarters in the Sir Cecil Jacobs Auditorium in St. Kitts under the theme In the Pursuit of Extraordinary Excellence. The 2-day conference addresses critical economic challenges and opportunities facing the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, ECCU. The dialogue gathered leaders from various sectors to explore transformative solutions necessary for the region's sustainable growth and resilience. Dr. Didicus Jules, OECS Director General, emphasized the need for innovative approaches to navigate geopolitical shocks, urging the region to strive for an environment unaffected by such challenges.
We are gathered here once again in collective pursuit of transformation. Transformation that is not merely incremental, but bold, visionary, and urgent, as you've heard from Governor Antoine.
Highlighting the pressing need for action as expressed by ECCB Governor Timothy N.J. Antoine. Dr. Jules described the current era as a year of extraordinary entropy, stemming from the concepts initially developed by the U.S. Military College after the fall of the Soviet Union.
The law of entropy, as those of us who've done science knows, states that in a closed system, things tend to move from order to disorder unless energy is applied to maintain and restore order.
Dr. Jules noted, urging participants to apply this understanding to contemporary global dynamics.
Conflicts in regions like Eastern Europe, the Middle East, parts of Africa, signal an erosion of diplomatic order and an increase in volatility, entropy in action. Global governance mechanisms like the UN, the WTO, are struggling now to enforce norms and to maintain balance, suggesting a drift towards chaos unless actively reinvigorated. The second expression of entropy is on a planetary scale. Climate systems are becoming less predictable and more extreme. Heat waves, superstorms, floods. In fact, I just learned yesterday, I don't know how accurate it is, someone told me that the coming season we expect over 17 severe storms. Without effective intervention, we are witnessing a rising tide of disorder in ecosystems, agriculture, and weather patterns. The third is a disordered abundance of technology and information. The digital age has flooded humanity with unprecedented volumes of information, but not necessarily more clarity. So let's be clear about the IT revolution. It has its positives as well as its negatives. Social cohesion. We see misinformation, deepfakes, AI-generated content, muddying understanding. Social cohesion is challenged by information entropy. Truth and falsehood mix freely, degrading trust in institutions and media. At the same time, technology also offers tools to impose new kinds of order, but these require intentional design and oversight. The fourth and last one is mental and social entropy in human systems. Burnout, loneliness, mental health crises. Many people feel emotionally and socially disordered in today's hyper-connected, high-pressure world. Societies struggle to find shared narratives of values, and polarization is rising across political, cultural, and generational lines.
He outlined 4 significant spheres where entropy is evident: increasing disorder in geopolitical systems, unpredictable climate patterns, an overwhelming abundance of information undermining social cohesion, and mental health challenges arising from today's high-pressure, high-connected world.
This year's theme, In Pursuit of Extraordinary Excellence, invites us to break free from the bonds of business as usual. And I'm on the same page with Governor in that regard. Break free from those bonds of business as usual. This is not just about thinking ahead of the curve. It is also thinking differently about what we need to do. We need to embrace radical shifts required for the region to thrive in the 21st century.
Dr. Jules highlighted attendees' core challenge to summon the courage needed to combat the entropy defining these times. He reiterated the OECS Commission's mission, emphasizing that collaboration should take precedence over competition and that the focus should be on building resilient systems. The OECS Director General described the 4 selected pillars for discussion: economic, social, data, and infrastructure opportunities, urging delegates to envision how to foster a transformative agenda. Drawing upon wisdom of Caribbean art and culture, he quoted the late Calypsonian Black Stallion, reminding attendees that resilience and gratitude are vital in prosperous and challenging times.
The ambition before us is not about chasing growth for growth's sake. It is about shaping a future where our people live healthier, more empowered lives, where our economies are sustainable and shock-proof,
reinforcing the importance of valuing cultural wealth alongside financial assets. As he concluded, he reiterated the importance of the partnership fostered by the dialogue.
In the Caribbean, we are famous for talk. But this year's dialogue should not just be a forum of ideas, but a catalyst for action. Let us commit with urgency and unity to the pursuit of excellence, not just as an aspiration, but as an urgent expectation.
The conference discussions aligned with the ECCB's goal of fostering practical solutions to advance the region's economic and social landscapes, reinforcing the vital role of collaborative efforts among government, the private sector, academia, civil society, and international partners. The dialogue is an invitation for further conversations and actionable steps toward realizing the goals during this transformative event. Dania Phipps, a resident of Sadlers, has been sentenced to serve 45 years in His Majesty's prison for the murder of Clement Mills, a victim from Parsons Village. The tragic incident occurred on April 22, 2020, and has reverberated through the local community ever since. Phipps's trial commenced on February 5, 2025 at the High Court in Bastia and concluded on February 18, 2025. After several days of hearings, the jury returned a guilty verdict by a majority decision, signaling a significant moment in the contentious case for all parties involved. The sentencing was delivered by His Lordship Justice Ian Morley, King's Counsel, on April 9, 2025. During the proceedings, Justice Morley expressed the gravity of the crime, emphasizing the loss of life and the impact on the family and community of the deceased. The court heard evidence that depicted the circumstances leading to the tragic altercation that resulted in Mills' death, which has left a scar on the residents of Parsons Village. Phipps had misgivings over his estranged relationship with the victim's sister, named as Samantha in the court documents, who had seemingly begun a new relationship with a man named Ronaldo in the court documents. The judgment posted on the EC Court's web portal said of the crime that, quote, "The killing can be characterized as hot-blooded in jealousy and anger, though with planning and premeditation, as he forewarned his behavior, making his way armed to the Mills home. And though his focus was probably on killing Ronaldo, in my judgment, shooting Clement was an exercise of bullying, coercive control over Samantha's family, and, but for his fumbling the reload, others would have likely been killed, end quote. According to the details shared in court, Phibbs will have the time spent on remand deducted from his overall sentence, making it clear that while justice has been served, the path ahead remains long for the convicted individual. Importantly, there is a provision for early release, as Phibbs will be eligible for parole after serving 2/3 of his sentence, provided he demonstrates good behavior while incarcerated. In regional news, 5 in custody over massive cocaine find in Guyana. News source Guyana reports.
Police in Region 1 have arrested 5 Guyanese nationals following the discovery of more than 465 pounds of cocaine in the Imbo-Terro area, Barima River, in the Northwest District. In a statement, the Guyana Police Force said the bust took place on Tuesday during an intelligence-led operation in the area. According to the police, a senior police officer and other ranks carried out a raid at a residence and fuel bond of Anthony Hosea Beira, also known as Anthony Hosea Yespin. And during that raid, they seized 11 cellular phones and 3 handheld radio sets. There were no narcotics found at those locations. However, a suspect fled the scene moments before the raid. The police said its subsequent investigations led to the arrest of 4 individuals, and the 4 directed the police to separate locations along the Imbo-Terro Creek, where several bags of cocaine were found stashed. A fisherman led the police to one salt bag containing 20 parcels of a creamish rock-like substance, which turned out to be cocaine, weighing 23.5 kilograms. A farmer in the area also led the ranks to 2 more salt bags containing 40 parcels of cocaine weighing 47 kilograms, while another farmer led the police to 3 salt bags containing a total of 60 parcels of cocaine weighing 70.6 kilograms. Additionally, the police said they were led by an unemployed man to another 3 salt bags of cocaine weighing a total of 70.6 kilograms. The police said each of the suspects were arrested, cautioned, and placed into custody. Their names have been given as Marlon Jerome, Anthony Lewis, Patrick Sam, and Leroy Williams. The main suspect, Anthony Hosea Barrera, was later arrested, and he is currently in custody assisting with the investigations. The seized cocaine has a street value of $317.5 million Guyana dollars, according to the police.
CDB President Daniel Best warns of the negative impacts of geopolitical tensions and protectionist policies on regional economic stability. CNC3 has that story.
As the geopolitical tensions and protectionist policies increase, Caribbean Development Bank President Daniel Best says this can lead to slowdowns in major trading partners such as the United States or the European Union. Best highlights that this can result in reduced demand for Caribbean exports, impacting broad industries like tourism, agriculture, and manufacturing.
The knock-on effects include lower revenues, reduced investment, which can impact overall economic stability, and a decline in remittances, which will disproportionately impact vulnerable households.
Best underscores on how important it is to improve competitiveness and acknowledge the work the TNT Manufacturers Association has been doing to increase growth.
Moreover, the association promotes productivity enhancement among its members by facilitating the use and improvement of digital technology. My friends, I cannot overstate the importance of these activities in driving the competitiveness of the manufacturing sector.
The Institute of Chartered Accountants of TNT, at its 55th annual general meeting, re-elected Marissa Kwashi and Arun Sinath as the president and vice president. Kwashi, in her remarks, reinforced that the council's aim is to build on the achievements of the past year by advancing strategic initiatives that support ethical leadership, digital transformation, and sustainable growth. She adds that IGAT remains committed to championing the accounting professional role in shaping a more transparent, innovative and inclusive future for TNT.
We now bring you these international reports.
Beijing hit back yet again against US tariffs on Friday. China raised its own tariffs on US imports to 125%. It's in response to US President Donald Trump's decision to hike duties on Chinese goods to 145%. The move further raises tensions in a trade war which threatens to upend global supply chains. The turmoil unleashed by Trump's tariffs showed few signs of easing Friday. Markets tumbled and foreign leaders were unsure how to respond to the biggest disruption to the world trade order in decades. Stocks were battered this week, but saw a brief rally Thursday after Trump paused duties for dozens of countries for 90 days. But that quickly fell away as global stocks fell, the dollar slid, and a sell-off in US government bonds picked up pace on Friday. Gold is a safe haven for investors in times of crisis, and the metal scaled a record high. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent tried to calm worried markets on Thursday. He told a cabinet meeting more than 75 countries wanted to start trade negotiations.
Doing very well.
Trump himself expressed hope of a deal with China. But the uncertainty extended some of the most volatile trading in years. Asian indices mostly followed Wall Street lower on Friday. China's latest tariff hike also sent stocks down in Europe. The Stoxx 600 fell more than 1% on the day and was set for another drop this week, one of its most volatile on record.
A groundbreaking drug for patients with advanced breast cancer will become available on the NHS. Capivasertib is a targeted treatment with fewer side effects, which has been shown to shrink tumours and extend life. Our health correspondent, Sophie Hutchinson, reports.
I decided that really what I wanted was a garden that had a lot of perennials in it and bulbs in it.
Linda's a keen gardener. It keeps her active. She also cycles 60 miles a week and does Pilates. It's hard to believe she has advanced breast cancer, which has spread to her bones and chest walls. But she's had incredible results from the new drug called Capivasertib.
It's a fantastic drug. It's just amazing. It does literally allow you to have a normal kind of life and to forget sometimes even that you've got cancer. And it's given me nearly 4 years now of extra time.
The drug, which was first designed at the Institute of Cancer Research, is now being made available on the NHS. It's for the most common type of breast cancer called HR positive with a specific gene mutation.
They started working on this new drug here 20 years ago. Scientists wanted a medicine that could target the growth protein in cancer cells and switch it off, and that's what they've achieved.
The scientists behind it say it's one of the most effective drugs they've seen for advanced cancer.
This really is quite a breakthrough for many patients, and some patients as well can have really durable responses on Capivasertib, and that's what's so exciting about it, that it helps double treatment on average, and for some people can actually potentially induce responses for years.
It's nice to see all the flowers come out anyway. Oh look, a little robin on the bird feeder over there.
One benefit of Capivasertib is that unlike chemotherapy, it has few side effects. It means Linda and her husband are able to travel.
It does make you think about your life and what you've done with your life and what you want to do with your life in the future. But at least you feel well enough to make those plans and confident enough as well to fulfil some of those plans.
It's hoped around 3,000 women a year in England, like Linda, will now benefit from this new drug. Sophie Hutchinson, BBC News.
Spanish ham and chorizo company depends on the US market for 60% of its revenue. Little wonder then that Embucha's Famine co-owner Santiago Martin breathed a sigh of relief when Donald Trump announced a 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs for most of the US's trading partners.
It seems very good to me. It gives us a little bit of breathing room, doesn't it? I think this should have been the way to do things from the beginning. I mean, if a country considers that it should raise its tariffs, well, it has the right to do so, but in an orderly, proportionate and more relaxed manner.
On Wednesday, Trump cut custom duties imposed on European products from 20 to a 10% rate. But that doesn't mean it's business as usual at Embutidos Famine. Martin says he's looking at ways to diversify.
We're
always trying to grow in other countries, but now at the moment it's more urgent. We have to try and sell, and we are working on it. We're putting all the means at our disposal to boost sales in Asian countries, mainly and specifically in China, where we are focusing our efforts now to be able to increase sales there.
For the company located in the Spanish town of La Alberca, Trump's tariff pause has alleviated some pressure. But it also leaves a looming uncertainty of what happens in 90 days' time. Martin says the business could slice away at its margins to a certain point, but he worries that some costs would have to be passed to customers, resulting in lower sales.
The EU says it's ready to respond if US trade talks fail, but at what cost? This is Macro Matters, and we're talking trade. The US has paused some tariffs for 90 days, even as it escalated its trade war against China, leaving Europe stuck in the middle. EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen has said Europe is ready to respond if trade talks are unsuccessful, including with taxes on big tech. George Buckley is Chief European Economist at Nomura. George, after a week of contradictory news from the White House, the big tariffs threatened this week could in theory be back in 90 days. So where does the EU go from here?
Well, it's a good question, and it really depends upon what the US does and how the negotiations, assuming that there are some between now and the next 90 days, go. You'd hope to think that the EU and the US could come to some sort of agreement, but I think when it comes to the current US administration, it's very difficult to know where the final end point is for any of this is going to be. I'd be very surprised at this point if it turns out that there are no extra tariffs. We already know that there's 10% on pretty much everything, plus also 25% on autos. The EU has held off, as you said, from responding to that, but I'd be very surprised if we don't end up with something at all, and that in itself would be negative. There are also repercussions from what they're doing on China, what the US is doing on China, if that stays in place for European growth and European prices and inflation. So I think that's also worth bearing in mind as well.
I'll come back to China in a minute, George, but what leverage does Europe have, do you think?
Well, they are a big trading bloc. Donald Trump probably would like to have better relations, particularly on trade with Europe. Europe probably is going to go down the route of spending more money on defence. Some of that, not all of it. They want a lot more of it, the procurement, to come from within the EU, but some of it inevitably will come from the US. So they could offer, for example, to buy more US produce, but that will all be part of the negotiations, and I'm sure that this will be more obvious over the next few months.
As you already mentioned, the escalating trade breakdown between the US and China means that China needs to look for new markets. How worried should Europe be about the dumping of Chinese goods?
I think they should be very worried, and it might even be difficult to work out whether dumping is happening or whether it's simply the case that very weak CPI and producer price inflation in China is simply pulling down on prices more generally. If you look at a chart, for example, of Chinese export prices generally against European import prices generally, there's a very close correlation indeed, which does suggest that what happens in China doesn't stay in China. It has huge repercussions outside of China and in the EU as a whole. So if you start to see China with excess goods, it could pull down on inflation. And even without explicit dumping, it could generate a further fall in prices, which could ultimately end up being seen in Europe as well in their import prices.
Is it possible that this could actually bring Europe closer to China in the sense that it can portray itself as a more stable trading partner than the US at the moment?
I mean, I don't think the EU would be particularly happy if it was the case that dumping of Chinese goods at below cost price, for example, in Europe was to happen. So I'm not sure that would help on the sort of closeness, if you will. But of course, it could mean that trade between Europe and China steps up. And I think we've seen this with a number of initial discussions. You've seen it in the UK, for example, where there's a desire to be much more closely aligned with other countries to try and offset some of the Trump tariffs. So it may be the case that there is an improvement in negotiations in trading partners between all countries in the EU and other countries apart from the US, whether that be including China or not. I think you will see a great deal more of global cooperation outside of the US.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were: Agriculture Minister the Honorable Samuel Duggins provides insights on GEZ MOU. Police seize ammunition and cannabis in St. Kitts and Nevis. OECS Director General says region needs to embrace radical shifts at 9th Annual Growth and Resilience Dialogue. Daniel Phipps sentenced to 45 years for murder in St. Kitts and Nevis. 5 in custody over massive cocaine find in Guyana. CDB President Daniel Best warns of the negative impacts of geopolitical tensions and protectionist policies on regional economic stability. Internationally, Beijing increases tariffs on U.S. imports to 125%, hitting back at President Donald Trump's decision to hike duties on Chinese goods to 145%. Thank you for listening.